Hello and welcome to another edition of Word in the Burg, our monthly topical talk show about things that matter to Harrisburg and the region. Glad you could join us. I'm Eric Pappenfuss, Mayor, and we're going to be talking today about the new state archives, and maybe some of the old state archives. And we've been making news recently, and I think if people have been paying attention to the media, they've seen that the archives will be having a new home, and that a new home has been chosen in Uptown Harrisburg, specifically on 6th Street in Uptown Harrisburg, near what will eventually be the federal courthouse site. So we're joined today by three distinguished guests. We have first David Carmichael, who is the state archivist for Pennsylvania. We have noted local historian Caleb Jackson, who's done a lot of firsthand research in the Harrisburg archives, and I think at the state archives as well. And Howard Pullman, who is the director of external affairs for the PHMC, which is sort of overseeing the project. So Howard, maybe we can start with you, and let's just begin by talking about how was this site selected? We at the city are so excited, but what was the process, and why was the decision made to move to this new location on 6th Street?
Sure. We work with our partners at the Department of General Services to identify properties in Harrisburg that would be suitable for an archive. There are very stringent needs that must be met for any properties, and this property on 6th Street really met those needs. It was the right size, it was above the floodplain, and it wasn't too far from the existing archives and the state capitol complex, so we can avail ourselves of those services. So it seemed to be the perfect place to put the archives here in Harrisburg.
And why was it important to you to choose a site within the city? I know why it was important to the city, but from the standpoint, and describe a little bit about the workforce that will be moving with the archives as well.
Well, I think that the archive staff will move, so that's the folks who are working, taking care of the collections in the building. So they'll be moving to the space, about 26 people, maybe give or take, will be moving there. So they will be staying here in Harrisburg as opposed to moving out into Susquehanna Township, which was where we were originally talking about a new archives to be built.
Yeah, and we're certainly glad you're within the city limits. We think it's going to be a great connection to Harrisburg, and also with the new partnership with the local city archives will help be a means of really connecting the community to the archives as a whole.
It also helps keep the archives connected to the larger Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission family. The archives is a bureau within the commission. So having them just a few blocks up the street really keeps them, again, part of the family.
And if viewers don't know, the current archives is located in the tall windowless wall in the center of the Capitol complex.
Right adjacent to the State Museum. It's the State Museum and Archives complex, so that those structures were designed together. The archive, the museum, and the plaza itself work together. So it's just a great unit.
And let me turn to you, David. And I believe that part of the impetus for looking for a new site to begin with had to do both with a need for additional space, but also a need to have a more modern building. Can you talk to that?
Sure. The building we have today was designed, actually the design started in the late 1950s, and the building was constructed and opened in '64. So in that interim period of 50 years, it has certainly, the building has lived through as a useful building, but it has begun to deteriorate in ways, and it needs some major repairs. A new building is actually easier than repairing the current building for its current purpose. We have to have very, very strict environmental controls around the archives, and the building could probably be repurposed for other uses much more easily. So we are running out of space. We have records dating back to 1681, and although we collect only the permanently valuable records of state government, over 300 and some odd years, we have collected 250 million of those, and so we're getting very close to being out of space, and we can't wait till we're completely out before we build. So we're planning now and hope to be in a new building before we actually run out of space.
And I believe that before coming to Pennsylvania, you were the archivist in Georgia, and there you oversaw a similar process, the idea of moving from one location to another. Can you talk a little bit about what that process is going to be like here over there, as you prepare, especially over the next couple of years?
Sure. Well, the first thing we have to do is design a building that is really suited to storing archival records. It requires very, very strict environmental controls. And so we work to design a building that works really well to preserve documents. We have everything from parchment to electronic records. And so we need very good environments, and we need a building that is very welcoming to the public, of course. But behind the scenes, while all that is going on, we will be preparing this collection to move. And you don't move 250 million documents without thinking through it first. And so we are in a process right now. It's a 3-year process to plan that move and to make certain that everything is boxed properly, every box is barcoded, we know what's in the box, we know where it is. And so that is a very, very long process we're going through.
Okay. Now, Kayla, let me turn to you, because I think part of what we need to do is explain to the public what is in archives, and why is it important that we are preserving all of these records, and what can they tell us about our history? And I know you, as a historian, have spent a lot of time looking at historical records and documents. So make the case for why an archives is important.
Well, they're very important. For instance, the state archives, I've gone in, now they had the Harrisburg School District minutes back to 1845. But I was looking at William Howard Day when he was president of the school board in 1891. There are the minutes. And not only that, but somebody, luckily they included his speech that he made when they dedicated the Harrisburg High building. Also, city council records, Harrisburg City Council records are there. Divorce records, marriage records, birth and death. It's a little bit of anything and everything in the state archives for every city in the state. Usually they're by counties. And I just enjoy going in, and I think other people will go in and enjoy it.
Let's talk a little bit about genealogy and family history. Have you had an opportunity to research your own family's history via the archives?
Yes. But actually, my family came here in actually they came up just before World War I. So the 100th anniversary is coming up. My grandfathers on both sides of my family came to work in Pennsylvania, one in Harrisburg and one in Tyrone in 1918. And my father, of course, was in World War I, but in the 1920 census, they're in Harrisburg. So they had moved up, at least in one part in Harrisburg and my mother's side in Tyrone. So it's just a great place to research. As I said, they have so many, many records. And not only that, the staff is very good, because in the way that they can assist you in what you want to find.
Yeah, so let's just say, so walk a viewer through what it's like to use the archives from the standpoint of somebody who wants to do some research. And this will be hopefully even easier in the new building. But currently,
It had better be.
currently you would walk in, and let's say you want to find out something about a particular person or a time period. What would you do?
Well, first, if it's a person, I usually go in, you have to sign in, of course, show ID, and you talk to someone to get an initial idea of what you want to do, because the basic books are divided by counties, and if you're looking at Dauphin County, you go to Dauphin County and you see what records are available. And they're numbered. Once you finally decide what you want to look at, of course you apply for that, ask for that microfilm, and you pull the microfilm and go into it.
Yeah.
So there is a process that's set up by the archives for people to follow.
And it was amazing, I thought, just looking through some of the Harrisburg City archives. And I think we should let the viewers know that one of the exciting things we have done here is we now have a memorandum of understanding with the PHMC that the new State Archives building will take care of and put on deposit the Harrisburg City records, making them accessible to the public. And really, they haven't been for many years in Harrisburg due to financial constraints and the lack of a quality home. But I was amazed at the quality of those records and what they said, whether it was just looking at the list of death records or just the cause of death, the time, information about age and occupation and what they were doing and all these things. In some cases, this is really the only record, the only historical record of people's lives. So if you want to find out about your great-grandfather or your great-great-grandfather, that's it, right?
I actually found a copy of my original birth certificate. In the city archives.
Yeah.
And the death certificates are by year, of course. Yeah. And if you look at 1918 and 1919, you notice how that those volumes are very big. And a lot of that was because so many people died from the Spanish flu of 1918 and 1919. And I've seen records of the Capona, beautiful pictures of the riverfront, Reservoir Park with the Romper Day, playgrounds, school district, just so many records that just so nice because people can find pictures of their ancestors they may not find anywhere else.
Yeah. And William Howard Day, who you mentioned, of course, the first African-American school director in the country,
in a
a majority, predominantly white community, really incredible. And the City Beautiful movement, something which I think we all recognize and something which is celebrating its 100th anniversary this year, at least in terms of Capona, in terms of the Riverfront Steps, the Market Street Bridge, all those turning 100 this year. Those records, I think, are more important now than ever. So, Howard, back to you. So let's talk about the timing here. What is the process moving forward? When can we expect to see the building? Is it a sure thing? I know that you know we think of the federal courthouse, and we see that having gone on and on now for over a decade. So let's reassure the public when, where, and how is this going to happen?
It's a 3-year timeline. We'll begin design again in earnest in the fall. We'll break ground a year from then, and 2 years from then, hopefully we'll be open and moving in.
And the funding is secured.
It's secured.
So that is not that is the issue, I think, with the federal government, but not here. And so 2017, breaking ground. And that is that must be exciting.
Everybody, I mean, we're really excited. I mean, from someone who handles like marketing and PR for the agency, I'm really looking forward to like a groundbreaking ceremony and then the actual opening and all the things that we can do to again promote the archives. And you talked a little bit about the records that you can find in an archives, but there are a lot of records that are available online. We often talk about our partnership with Ancestry.com. They have digitized a lot of our state's birth and death records. They're available for free to citizens of Pennsylvania. All you do is like enter through the archives portal. And what we found out this year, we'll have at the end of this fiscal year, end of June 30th, we'll have over 45 million page views of those records, Pennsylvania records. So there's a lot of people come and look at the records on site, but there are millions and millions more around the world that can access Pennsylvania and Harrisburg records moving forward.
That's really incredible. I'm not sure the average member of the public understands that, if they're online and they're doing research on Ancestry.com, well, actually, that's due, in fact, to the records which have been
They had to come
here.
from somewhere, and we have them.
Yes. And how's the public feedback been so far? I know that we've hosted one informational meeting so far where the public could come and give feedback that was well attended earlier this year. There will be additional opportunities for input. But what's the word been so far?
People seem to be very excited about the prospect of the archives moving or staying in Harrisburg. I keep talking about moving. It's
down the street.
It's moving down the street.
Yeah.
Very excited. Again, we're getting a lot of interest from the media. We have a lot of folks who are like really wanting to find out more about what's in that building and how are you going to move all of those items. So it's kind of an opportunity for us to show people what's behind the scenes of an archive and get to understand more about what it is we do and why it is so important.
Yeah. And I'll put in a little aside of my own in this here now before we get back to you, David, and just say that we appreciate the fact that you have chosen a part of the city which has been overlooked by developers, I think, for a while now. It's an area which is ripe for development, and we're hoping that this project will help spur that ripple effect that all good development does. And I know there's been a lot of work with the city and having this conform with the comprehensive plan, and the city just passed a citywide, the school district did a citywide tax abatement, which should encourage developers to come in and do additional type of development in the area, so they can look to this project. And this is how expensive is this project? What's the total amount allotted for this building?
It's like $24 million.
$24 million. So suddenly an area which really hasn't seen a lot over the years is going to have a $24 million investment, and that should be a really positive effect on the entire community.
Well, it provides an anchor for the community, another asset that can be leveraged for more
and
development.
in more ways than one, too, because another nice aspect of this is that the Capitol Police will be sort of extending their patrols and range. So as the footprint sort of grows, there's greater collaboration, and the Harrisburg Police Department has a wonderful relationship with the Capitol Police, and we're really all in this together. So I see that as another really positive.
It's really a win-win, Mayor. I mean, for everyone involved.
Good, good. All right, so David, let's talk a little bit more too about from your perspective as somebody who's come from Georgia and is now overseeing this project here in Pennsylvania. What is the case that you would make, similar to Caleb's, to the sort of average resident watching, about why archives are important and why this project is going to be good for them, so to speak?
Sure. Well, when I talk about why archives are important, I always refer to your own family papers. Most people don't keep most of their papers that come in. You get an electric bill, you pay it, eventually you throw it out. But there are some things you do keep, and normally it's for two reasons. You keep legal documents that protect you legally, like a deed to a property or something like that, and you keep things that have great historical value to you. You might refer to it as sentimental value. You have family photographs and such. It's exactly what the state archives does for the state government. We protect sort of those two kinds of records, things that have permanent value because they have legal value to the citizens of Pennsylvania, or because they have value to tell the history, as you've been talking about, so that you can go in and see what happened in the past. And so we keep records, everything from William Penn's original 1681 charter that created Pennsylvania, property records, many of the records that show what the Commonwealth owns and where our boundaries are and things like that, these legal documents, birth records, marriage records, death records, again, have legal value. And then we keep historical records also. A lot of photographs, a lot of postcards, eventually things like birth records and such have more historical value than legal value. And so again, they continue on. So I think this is what we provide to the Commonwealth. We protect the people of Pennsylvania, and we also protect their history in many ways. For the people of Harrisburg, I think that you've touched on one of the greatest things. Bringing the Harrisburg City Archives into the state archives is going to be a great marriage of collections. You mentioned City Beautiful, and you and I have talked about how the state archives has many records related to the City Beautiful movement because of the state involvement, and then the city archives has these records. And we're going to find that over and over again, where there are these synergies between these records. So I think it's a great event, and I'm looking forward to being in the new building, obviously.
Great. And I'll give you just a recent example. We just had this wall collapse that was adjacent to the Mulberry Street Bridge, and it was part of the old McFarland printing business and operation. And all of those records, including the Horace McFarland Papers, are at the state archives. And I don't know if any reporter has had the time to really go back and to look at them, but I suspect you'll find information about that. He was the head of the Parks Commission at the time. He had a lot to do with the design and the building of the bridge and the structure. And then, of course, from a printing standpoint, I don't know if everyone knows this, but the McFarland Press was world renowned, especially for its color printing and color images of flowers. Almost every bulb or seed catalog in the country of the world, or all books having to do with species and varieties of flowers, all came out of Harrisburg at the time. So a really interesting collection that will be of, I think, use to scholars for many generations.
And people often think, well, they're old records, and so they don't have any current value. But you've just shown an example where you have to go back. Someone told me recently, a real estate attorney told me recently, that when she's pursuing oil and mineral rights on properties, she sometimes goes back to the William Penn documents and the original land transactions. And so even these very old documents can have great current meaning and importance to us.
Yes, and you have all the original atlases and surveys and maps, and it's a wonderful, another way that I think it's been used, and I've used it personally, is researching house histories. Or a lot of people live in historic homes. In fact, the overwhelming majority of Harrisburg's housing stock is historic, and it's a great way to sort of see when additions were added, how they were done, what was the construction material. I know people all the time are wondering how their sewer laterals work and whether they're party. Well, no, these are all historical records.
That's right.
And you're going to have to find them in the archives.
That's right.
100 years later, that's when they become useful. Hey, just one thing I think people might be thinking at home, isn't everything electronic these days? I mean, why are we building buildings for records as opposed to giant servers or something like that?
That's right. Well,
how would you respond to that?
We need some of both. We have about 250 million documents in the archives, and we have right now about 13.5 million of those online. And it will be many years before everything is online. We are receiving more and more records from state agencies in electronic form. So we have to preserve parchment, paper, electronic records, and we need a building that can do all of those things. We will be preserving paper for a very long time. Obviously, we've scanned William Penn's 1681 charter, but we're not going to throw out the charter now that we have a digital image of it. So we will keep the original around. And we keep all the laws that are passed in Pennsylvania. And my theory is that even when all that becomes electronic, the governor is still going to want to sign a piece of paper when the day comes, and we will get that paper. Okay. So we will have that. But we are planning for a digital future, and we're planning for digital archives as well. It's very, very difficult to keep digital records alive for hundreds of years because the hardware and software change so much. And so it requires a lot of effort and management. So this building must incorporate all of that.
Of course. Now, I know it hasn't been designed yet, but that's good. This is the before. But if you had your druthers, I mean, what are you hoping to achieve in this design? Give us a little sneak preview of what you'd like it to be.
Personally, I'm not as interested in how it looks. I want it to be beautiful.
Well, how does it function?
And I think I've told you that my archives in Georgia won the National Design Award because it was a beautiful building, right? So I want it to be beautiful. But it has to follow the function that we have. And one of the things that I loved about my building in Georgia was that 9 years after we moved in, it still functioned just the way we functioned as an office. And that's what I'm looking for here. That we need, and we've spent time with the architects talking about how we do our work and how we might do our work in the future as technology changes and such. So it has to be a very flexible building. It has to really work the way we work. And I think we can have both of those. We can have the function and we can have a beautiful form, because I do want it to be an anchor for that part of Harrisburg, and I want it to be a building that people want to come and see.
Sure.
We want the building to be very, very welcoming to people, as our tower is not necessarily so welcoming, and
it's noticeable, but
it's
not the adjective.
You do notice it, but people are afraid to approach it sometimes.
Sure.
And what a lot of people don't understand is that these are their records, and they can come in and use them. People often ask me, well, what do I have to do to use the archives? Do I have to be working on a PhD or something? No, just you can walk in when we're open, and they're your records, and we'll help you find what you want to look at.
And find a friendly archivist to walk you through it.
We have a lot of friendly archivists.
Yeah. So, Caleb, that's a good way to, I think, end our conversation. As a researcher, somebody who uses the archives, what are you looking forward to about the new building, and what would you like to see in terms of both function and design?
And I'll take notes as you.
Well, I noticed someone said that the main interest may be on Clinton Street rather than 6. Is that?
We haven't designed yet, so
okay,
we don't know.
I
guess that's possibly under consideration.
Under consideration, and that may be a good thing. But you need a building. Like, first of all, I like the Pappenfuss Archive building in Annapolis. I've been there, so that's a.
I have too, and I like it.
Okay, you're alluding to something which the viewers may not know. But my father was the Maryland State Archivist for 40 years, and actually built and designed the Maryland State Archives, which is now named after him. So I've had a real personal interest in making sure that the city's records and that the Commonwealth's records are not only preserved and secured, but made accessible for all. So so is it? Do you want in terms of a reading room or a reference room, and what would be inviting or?
Well, you'd have to have a reading room, reference room. Of course, you'd have to have a computer access to some things in there. But one of the things we mentioned were the hours that the archives are open. They should be open to hours that are accessible to people. And I mentioned possibly they would be open on a Sunday, and I understand that may happen, but it's not.
It's a challenge.
It's a
challenge, and we are open on Saturdays. I want to
yes,
make sure people understand.
Open on Saturdays,
right?
Yeah.
So that we are open on a day when a lot of people don't have to go to work. But,
Right.
but hours are always, we would like to be open 24 hours a day, 7
Sure.
days a week. But we are online. And that's one reason we want to put so many records online, so that people can access them when it's convenient to them, not when it's convenient to us. But as everyone understands, staffing levels are what they are, and we are open as much as we possibly can, and we will continue to stretch that when we can.
Yeah, and I think from the city standpoint, a lot of people that use the archives, sure, they're local like Caleb and will continue to be, but they're also they're traveling from all over,
Absolutely.
really all over
All
the
over the
country
world.
because we have a
Yes, they come to
world-class
see the
collection.
archives, yes.
And it's probably not just for a couple hours. They may be staying overnight, staying in hotels, staying for multiple days, and we are very happy that that's going to continue, especially in an area of Harrisburg which is on the move, on the rise. So with that, I say thank you to all of you for joining us for We're in the
you.
Burg
Thank
today.
you.
We look forward to the process of the new state archives continuing. If you have questions, feel free to email them to us at the city, and we will send them on to the PHMC. And thank you all for doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.